This is Inside Indiana Business Radio for the morning of Monday, September 25th, 2023. I'm Kate Sharon. The United Auto Workers strike against the big three automakers is now in its second week, and the impact has already been felt in Indiana, as Stellantis announced last week it's laying off 300 workers in Kokomo as a result of the strike. Mike Hicks, director of the Center for Business and Economic Research at Ball State University, says if the strike continues, the effects will be felt by more than just the union-backed auto workers. He said the impact will be acute in the places that have a lot of UAW members, but also among the suppliers supporting the automakers.
Fort Wayne, Kokomo, South Bend are going to feel a lot of this. I think, the potential statewide is for more like 60,000 workers, and then follow-on jobs. If you're running a bar or restaurant outside a union shop, that's going to affect you as well.
On Friday, the UAW announced it had expanded the strike to nearly 40 General Motors and Stellantis parts distribution centers in 20 states, though Indiana was not among them. Hicks said starting the strike with a relatively small number of workers, about 13,000, and ramping up things slowly has been a key tactic for the union. Purdue University this fall is launching what its officials believe to be Indiana's first rural education center. The Purdue Center for Rural Research, Education, and Outreach will focus on core principles like professional development, teaching, and outreach among schools in rural Indiana. It grew out of ideas sparked during the college's first Rural Education Summit convened last year to study how rural schools have fared under a national teacher shortage. The center will focus on 5 main points, including continuing professional development, research, teaching, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and outreach. Its leaders plan to establish an advisory board and apply for grant funding to help grow its reach and establish a journal promoting rural education scholarship. As Republican leaders in the Indiana General Assembly look to reduce and possibly eliminate the state's individual income tax, one of the state's top fiscal analysts say there's no clear replacement for a revenue stream that brings in about $8 billion a year and makes up a third of the state's overall tax income. IIB's Alex Brown has more.
In the most recent legislative session, lawmakers created a task force to review, among other topics, the individual income tax, including methods to reduce or eliminate it. State Budget Director Zach Jackson says in addition to lost revenue, another complicating factor is that Indiana also allows municipalities to collect local income taxes, which bring in between $3 and $4 billion a year. Senate Tax and Fiscal Policy Committee Chair Travis Holdman has argued that repealing the income tax by 2030 would help Indiana compete with states like Florida, Tennessee, and Texas that don't have a state income tax and have seen economic and population growth in recent years. Other states that have eliminated their income tax have had to offset the losses by raising property taxes, increasing sales tax rates or taxing services, or creating a new tax altogether. In 2022, lawmakers passed a tax cut package that gradually reduced the income tax rate over the next 7 years from 3.23% to 2.9%, with the stipulation that state tax revenue must have grown at least 2% in the previous budget year. It was the state's first income tax cut since 2013, and it was Holdman who added language to the bill to tie any income tax decrease to overall revenue growth. In the budget bill passed in April, lawmakers further accelerated those cuts to occur by 2027 and removed the 2% trigger requirement. Indiana's current income tax rate sits at 3.15%. Alex Brown, Inside Indiana Business Radio.
From the number one source for Indiana business news, this is Inside Indiana Business Radio.
Get ready, Northeast Indiana. We're headed your way. IBJ Media, Inside Indiana Business, and the Indiana Economic Development Corporation invite you to the second annual Engage Northeast Indiana event, presented by CareSource, Indiana University, and Old National Bank. Tuesday, October 10th at the Grand Wayne Center. We'll be diving into talent, education, and other issues shaping the regional economy. You can find more at ibj.com/engage.
The Wall Street Journal has unveiled its 2024 Best Colleges in the United States ranking, and 11 Indiana institutions are included. The publication evaluated the schools on a number of criteria in 3 categories: student outcomes, learning environment, and diversity. Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology is the highest-ranked Indiana school on the list at number 17. Notre Dame follows at 32, DePauw at 92, and Purdue West Lafayette at 115. Check out where the other 7 fall at InsideIndianaBusiness.com. A grant from the National Institutes of Health aims to position Indiana University to support substance use disorder researchers to find new addiction treatments. The grant, stemming from the National Institute on Drug Abuse, will provide about $7 million over 5 years to the IU Bloomington Center for Cannabis, Cannabinoids, and Addiction. It is one of 15 other centers that are funded through the NIDA's Core Center of Excellence grants. The center will work to answer unresolved questions about addiction and serve as a resource to those researching how lipid biomarkers and advanced optical imaging affect the brain when it comes to addictive substances. Indianapolis-based junk removal company Fire Dogs Incorporated has acquired a similar Connecticut-based company to expand into the northeastern U.S. market. The company Junk Bear will keep its branding, leadership, and staff, but will now be owned and operated by Fire Dogs as the parent company. Junk Bear has 12 employees, and the acquisition brings Fire Dog's total employee headcount to 77. Kristen Anderson, co-founder and partner at High Alpha, is this week's guest on the Business and Beyond podcast with Gary Dick, presented by PNC, a weekly conversation with high-profile Hoosiers in business, sports, and entertainment, and beyond. Available now from your favorite podcast provider. I'm Kate Sharon for Inside Indiana Business, Radio on Demand.